After Earth. If you're normal, you've either never seen this movie or forgot it existed. Until now. Don't worry, I'll give you a quick rundown. After Earth is an M. Night Shyamalan joint set in the future where a father and son crash land on a post-human Earth and shenanigans ensue. The original premise is that the father is injured and immobilized, leaving it up to the son to brave the elements and get help. While the movie was initially envisioned as a present-day thriller by Will Smith, he eventually decided to turn it into a sci-fi flick. And that's all you need to know, other than the rules for this rewrite, which we'll get into right now. Rule number 1. The cast must be the same. Now, After Earth doesn't have a huge cast. The biggest players are Will Smith, of course, and Jaden, doing a weird future accent. I'm not changing the casting even though it'd be easy to just throw in someone better.
Wow!
We're sticking with our beloved Nepo baby. I do, however, reserve the right to omit minor characters that are deemed unnecessary. Rule number 2. The budget must remain the same. In doing research, I found out this movie cost $130 million, sans marketing, which is actually a lot of money for me to play with. Still, it is a limit, so I'll try to keep this from being too flashy. Now then, with our premise spoken and rules in mind, let's head on down to... It says it's pronounced... Earth? The opening is identical to the movies, which I actually think is fairly strong. We get a clip of Cypher guiding Katai through breathing while their ride gets progressively bumpier. Then Cypher gets yeeted out of sight. The difference is what happens in the aftermath. In the original movie, we go into a voiceover detailing how humans poisoned Earth and then left to become space cowboys, and Cypher Rage is the coolest cowboy of all. In this script, we're instead going into our first flashback. In this flashback, we're with Katai on Nova Prime, which is where mankind now lives. This flashback and all flashbacks will take place completely inside with whited out windows. Saves us some money, and also, happy coincidence, creates a great contrast between Nova Prime and Earth. Anyway, in the flashback we go through a brief montage of Katai in Ranger Academy, training to become a ranger just like his daddy, which is basically a space cop / soldier. Katai struggles here. We see that he isn't the best fighter or tactician, and when he eats at the cafeteria he does so alone, making papier-mâché birds while everyone else chit-chats about fighting and how to ghost, which we'll circle back to. We end the flashback with Katai looking up at a plaque of his dad, hearing over the intercom that Cypher, the greatest ranger who ever lived, known as the Prime Ghost, is coming to visit the school. Our protagonist then awakens. We're back on After Earth. Katai recovers, searching for his dad. He discovers and awakens to him, happy to find him alive. But Cypher scolds his son for not checking inventory first, then commands him to take stock. Katai obeys. His gear is pretty much the same as in the movie. A sci-fi sword, a medkit, his sci-fi suit. No breathing canisters though, cause I'm removing them. If you didn't know, in the OG movie, due to Earth's different oxygen levels, Katai needed to slurp science juice to breathe.
Stop it. Get some help.
Not in this script. Once Katai is done checking inventory, his daddy tells him the sitch. A ship malfunction caused a science thing that made them crash. Cypher's legs are busted, but luckily the ship is functional enough to sustain him, has supplies for a few weeks, and has gene-coded shields that will prevent predators from just walking in and chowing down on our lovable heroes. The other half of the ship, which inconveniently housed the only SOS device, is way far away. So they have two choices. Hunker down and wait for potential rescue, if anyone is able to track them down, or risk having an exciting movie. Katai clearly wants to hunker down, but Cypher, in a passive-aggressive way, mentions how rescue might not happen, and states that they should rely on themselves. So, in a bid to impress his father, Katai volunteers to go. And he does, out into the wilds on his own. Fortunately, Cypher can communicate with Katai through his suit, also being able to see from its camera, so nothing could possibly go wrong. On his way out, Katai sees the remnants of a cocoon belonging to a large beast. He asks about the thing which surely emerged from it, an Ursa, but Cypher tells him to move on and guesses that the Ursa died of its wounds. Like a dummy, Katai believes his dad, then begins his bizarre adventure. He treks across the land, doing sweet parkour, until at one point his suit changes.
My suit's turned black. I like it, but I think it's something bad.
Unlike the movie version, this Katai knows what that means, and hides. Instead of turning black like in the movie, his suit is camouflaged to fit his environment. He seeks shelter while Cypher warns him that the suit has detected nearby life forms. Lo and behold, here comes our first conflict: Neanderthals. My concept for this new Earth is that after a mini-apocalypse forced humanity to take to the stars, evolution is basically reset, with some mutations. Scientists, don't at me. Anyway, despite his camouflage, the natives spot Kitai. They attack, and we get our first fight. I'd want this to be a quick 3v1. Kitai isn't the best in his class by any means, but he's still a trained space cowboy versus a bunch of literal Neanderthals. He struggles, but manages to cut down 2 opponents with his future blade. Then, to his surprise, the third throws his club down, gets on his knees, and surrenders. Kitai hesitates. Cypher tells him to take the kill, but Kitai backs away, sparing his enemy. And at that moment, the Ursa appears. It stands atop a hill, looking down at our protagonist, who freezes. Cypher yells at his son to ghost, which we'll get into, I promise. We see Kitai try, turning the fringes of the screen gray, but he fails as color explodes back into focus. The Neanderthal beside him throws a spear at the Ursa, and it attacks, barreling into him with a mass of limbs and teeth. At close range, Kitai gets a gash on his arm. He flees as more Neanderthals appear and try to capture him, eventually managing to escape by swimming across a river. We only see why the Neanderthals didn't follow after, as crocodiles swim through the water. Our hero got lucky this time. In the aftermath, Kitai is chided by Cypher for being unable to ghost. Kitai apologizes, promising to do better. Cypher commands his son to find a place to rest so he can use his medkit. So our hero finds shelter, then injects himself with a medical needle that'll put him into a regenerative sleep cycle. Cue our next flashback as Kitai sleeps. This time it's in the Rage home, which, if you've forgotten, Rage is our hero's last name. It's Rage. Rage! The Rage home is stylized almost identically to the Academy, which saves us money but also tells us about Cypher. There's barely any furniture, no decoration, no color. Kitai tells Daddy Rage that he was rejected for promotion to Junior Ranger, and that his instructor recommended him for another year at the Academy. Cypher reacts like a robot. He's confused, then flatly says that he's sure it'll work out. Then he tells Kitai he's sending him to his mom this weekend despite promises otherwise, as he has work to do.
End of flashback.
Kitai awakens. Fully healed, he starts off. As he does so, he comes across evidence of battles between the Ursa and natives. When Kitai asks Cypher why they were transporting the monster, his father explains that it was for a final test for a class of senior rangers. During this travel montage, Kitai asks Cypher how to defeat the Ursa, and Daddy Rage tells him that the only way is ghosting. He then explains the premise of both Ursas and ghosting. The former is an alien native to Nova Prime and the life-sustaining planets in that quadrant of the galaxy. On Nova Prime, the Rangers have hunted the Ursa to extinction, but elsewhere they haven't yet been wiped out. The latter, ghosting, is a mental technique invented by the first Ranger, who in this version is not Cypher Rage. This technique essentially deadens the emotions of the user completely, allowing them to become semi-invisible to the Ursa. In this version, instead of being completely undetectable, it just makes the users harder to follow. Think of staring at someone normally versus staring at them with beer goggles on. Or just staring at them while you're drunk. I guess you don't need the goggles. Anyway, Kitai stumbles upon some Neanderthals hunting deer. Cypher orders him to attack, stating that leaving enemies alive is a recipe for future pain. Although hesitant, Kitai obeys, ambushing the natives, although instead of killing them, he disarms them and runs them off, much to Cypher's disappointment. As he does so, the Ursa arrives. Kitai freezes, again trying to ghost, again failing. Luckily, the Ursa goes for a slain deer between them, giving our brave hero the chance to run for his life. After escaping, Kitai reaches a cliff that gives him a good vantage of the area. He spots the tail end of the ship and notices that, unfortunately, natives have made a camp around it. Cypher then tells his son to abort the mission. When Kitai asks why, he's told that he doesn't have the heart for it and that he cannot finish the way he is now.
It's my fault.
The Elder Rage explains.
I put too much faith in you. There's too much of your mother in you. You're not a ranger.
Kitai, despite being hurt, refuses to surrender. He leaps from his vantage, and we get the scene from the movie where a giant bird tries out some sky fishing. This version of Kitai narrowly escapes, gliding through trees to eventually crash into safety. While the bird gives up the hunt, Katai uses another medical needle, plunging into regenerative sleep.
Flashback.
This time Cypher is preparing a ship in the Academy hangar. Katai approaches, asking him what he's doing before Cypher tells his son to address him formally by rank. The younger Rage does, repeating his question. Cypher explains that he's heading to a different ranger facility with important cargo, a baby Ursa. Katai asks permission to come along. Cypher looks at his son approvingly, granting permission. We jump back to Katai waking up. He observes the native camp in a clearing amidst the ruins of the ship crash, formulating a plan to sneak in, get the SOS device, and get out. In this version, Cypher still has access to Katai, unlike the original where their comms were severed. He pushes back against his son, risking himself, and advises instead to lure the Ursa into the camp via loud noises. The beast will kill everyone, ensuring victory. Katai refuses, saying he wants to do things his own way. Cypher reluctantly gives approval. Our hero waits until nightfall, sneaking into the camp, but he's spotted. Alarms immediately sound, forcing our hero to run. He's hunted into the woods, running right into the Ursa, and a three-way battle commences. Katai tries to keep away from the beast, which seems to focus on the Neanderthals. Mid-fight, he manages to get a moment of reprieve, and Cypher tells him that now is his time. Finally, Katai manages to ghost, and he engages the Ursa 1v1. The Neanderthals retreat, letting the two duke it out. Katai manages to wound the Ursa, dodging its strikes, getting the upper hand, until, at the perfect moment, he gets an opportunity to land the killing blow. Only, he notices something. The Ursa is looking around, trying to find him, and it's afraid. Katai slips out of the ghost then, but the beast doesn't strike. Cypher tells him to finish the job, but Katai does not. Instead, he sticks his weapon into the ground, refusing to take the kill. In response, the Ursa hesitates, staring at Katai. Then it runs, disappearing into the woods. When the natives see this, they don't attack our victorious hero out of fear, so he takes his weapon and goes to the ship, using the SOS device. By the time Katai exits the wreckage, the Neanderthals are still at the edges of the camp, watching, although none get close. A ship appears in orbit, reaching out over comms to identify itself as search and rescue. Meanwhile, Cypher asks how his son did it, so Katai answers.
You were right, Dad. I'm not a ranger.
He says.
And I never will be.
And that's my rewrite. After Earth is an interesting movie, but not intentionally. What interests me when it comes to this movie is how it takes potential and squanders it at every turn. Because the premise and themes it can explore are engaging, but the movie chooses a direction that ultimately I cannot agree with. Let me explain. Both scripts revolve around the concept of ghosting, but mine treats it fundamentally different than M. Night and Will's. In the original, the final confrontation is between Katai and the Ursa. He ghosts, then kills it. And it's meant to be a triumphant moment, but to me, it is a failure, because of this movie's ultimate thesis, which is that, to become a man, you must not feel. This movie posits Cypher Rage as a cool guy. Tough as nails, no-nonsense hero to venerate, but also has points where it shows a side of him that I thought would be explored. He's embarrassed to show affection when his daughter calls him in front of soldiers. His wife freezes up when he approaches. On a dime, he yells at his son.
May I go to my room, sir?
Denied! Sit down!
These are all seemingly indications that Cypher is not the paragon the opening narration shows him to be. But, confusingly, Katai's triumph over the Ursa and survival are attributed directly to Cypher's dogma. In fact, the movie ends with Cypher saluting Kai, his son, instead of showing him actual affection. This is a very narrow and constricting portrayal of masculinity. Cypher literally bottles everything up inside, showing no emotions other than anger and authority. But in the end, the movie does not want to confront this. In fact, it celebrates it. Ghosting isn't a weakness, it's a strength. Cypher is so much of a hero that a disabled vet demands to be let out of his chair to salute him. Not included in this script are two characters that are semi-important. Katai's sister, Senshi, and Cypher's wife, Faya. Or Faya. I'm not gonna go back and watch. Anyway, both act in service of this stoic masculinity. Faya is the emotional nurturer to Cypher's emotionless leader, instructing him to reach out to his son, which, spoiler alert, he never does. Whereas Senshi is fridged to motivate her brother. Now, Senshi in particular is interesting because she too was a ranger, but died due to being unable to ghost. And while the movie doesn't explicitly detail why, you can infer that she was too quote-unquote soft. We don't get much of her, but what we do see doesn't portray her as a warrior. Instead, she's a reader, a daughter who loves her dad, smiling, happy, which is fine. Great, even. But her inability to ghost is specifically contrasted against Katai's potential downfall. So intentionally or not, her emotional fullness is directly linked to weakness and failure. Also, side note, when Katai asks his dad if he should have done anything differently to save his sister when he was literally a baby, Cypher essentially says, "I don't know. What do you think you should have done?"
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
My script rectifies this, because Cypher Rage is a good soldier, but he's not a good father. He doesn't know Katai, he doesn't care about Katai. He wants a clone, not a son, and the clone he's making will be just like him. Emotionally stunted, prone to flashes of fury, ultimately empty. Katai's journey shouldn't be about becoming his father. It should be about embracing himself and the things that make him who he is. Because you can be a man and be quote-unquote soft. You can be opposed to violence, or like Pink, or whatever. Either way, I prefer my protagonists to expand their horizons instead of narrow them. So that maybe someone who watches this decides, hey, I'm different. And that's okay. That's all I've got for this one, folks. Hit me with that like and subscribe if you got this far, because I've got plenty more coming your way. And speaking of, for my next rewrite, we're going back to 1984 to hang out with one Steve Trevor. Until then, though, cheers.